When I bought the house, I thought I was moving into peace, not the middle of a neighborhood drama waiting to explode. The place was modest, brick exterior, a big oak tree in the front yard, and just enough charm to feel like home. I'd just finished my first week living there, still surrounded by boxes, still figuring out which drawer should hold the silverware. So when I decided to throw a small housewarming party, I wasn't expecting chaos. I invited a handful of friends, mostly from work, which just so happens to be a local police department. Off duty that night, out of uniform, good people just looking to celebrate. We kept it low-key, grills smoking in the backyard, drinks flowing, music playing at a respectful level. Laughter, stories, the usual, nothing wild. But if you've ever dealt with a nosy HOA neighbor, peace is always temporary. Cue Karen, late 50s, golf visor, clipboard, and the kind of scowl that looks permanent. She wasn't even on my welcome committee, but she appointed herself as the neighborhood watchdog. It started with her glaring from across the street, pacing in front of her hedge like she was waiting for an excuse. And soon enough, she called 911, said there was a suspicious gathering happening next door, that people were drinking, possibly armed. What she didn't know? Half my guests were detectives, lieutenants, and even one sergeant from the department. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And tell me if your neighborhood has a Karen, too. When the first squad car pulled up, lights flashing, I thought it was a prank. One of my buddies even laughed, figured someone was late to the party and making an entrance. But when the second cruiser rolled in behind it, and a third stopped at the corner, that's when the mood shifted. Music. Cut off. Everyone started glancing around. Then I saw her, Karen, standing at the end of her driveway with her arms folded, that smug little grin stretched across her face like she'd just caught a burglar red-handed. Two officers stepped out. They were young, probably newer to the force, unfamiliar with most of the folks milling around in my backyard. One reached for his radio as he approached. Evening. Got a report about a disturbance. Said there might be weapons involved. Before I could say a word, one of my guests, Detective Morales, stepped forward and pulled out his badge. I think there's been a misunderstanding, he said, cool as ever. Then Lieutenant Harris joined him, and Sergeant McCauley. One by one, badges started flashing. It was like watching a magician pull endless cards from his sleeve. The younger officer blinked. Wait, this is a department gathering? I nodded. Off duty, just a housewarming. To their credit, they backed off quick. Apologized for the confusion and radioed in a false alarm. But the damage was already done. My guests were tense, some were annoyed. Morales just looked over at me and said, "You've got yourself a situation across the street." I turned to see Karen still watching, still smiling. She had no idea her little stunt just blew up in her face. The second the cruisers pulled away, Karen came marching over like she was the one in charge. She didn't even hesitate. Just walked right into my front yard like she owned the place. "Well," she said, looking around, "that was fast. I assume they shut you down." I kept my tone even. "No, they realized it was just a get-together. Nothing illegal happening here." She squinted at me like she couldn't quite believe. "Do you expect me to believe that a bunch of cops were just hanging out? Drinking on duty?" Before I could respond, Sergeant McCauley stepped in. "Off duty, everything's above board." His voice was firm, not angry, just final. But Karen wasn't done. "It's a safety issue," she insisted, arms crossed. "You've got people parking on the street, blocking sidewalks, and who knows what kind of noise you're planning to make tonight. I have every right to report that." Morales stepped up beside me, calm as always. "Ma'am, are you aware that filing a false report is a crime?" Karen faltered. Her mouth opened, then closed again. "I didn't file anything false. I reported what I saw." "What you thought you saw," he corrected. "Which turned out to be nothing. You called 911 on a group of off-duty officers at a private residence. She didn't like that. Not one bit. Her cheeks went red. Her jaw tightened. But she didn't have a comeback this time. Just spun on her heel and stormed back across the street, muttering something about escalating this to the HOA. I watched her go, heart still pounding. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Karen didn't waste any time. By Monday morning, there was already an email from the HOA sitting in my inbox. Subject line: Community Standards Violation, 137. Willow Ridge. The message? A formal complaint. Loud music, obstructed walkways, possible alcohol consumption outdoors, and my personal favorite, multiple unknown individuals loitering on the property. I almost laughed. Unknown? These people were my friends, my colleagues. Many of them had probably responded to calls in this neighborhood before she even lived here. But I wasn't surprised. Karen wasn't just upset, she was embarrassed. Her 911 stunt backfired, and now she needed a new angle. So I took the high road. I emailed back, attached my deed, zoning details, and a brief note. This was a private event on private property, attended by law enforcement professionals. No laws were broken. Let me know if you'd like to discuss this further. That same afternoon, I spotted Karen on her porch, speaking to a couple from down the block. She was pointing at my house, animated and whispering behind her hand like she was rallying a cause. The couple nodded along, half listening, half hesitant. I knew what she was doing, trying to turn the neighborhood against me. But the funny part? It wasn't working. The next day, Lieutenant Harris, dropped by, brought donuts, said, "Some of the guys heard what happened. Just wanted to check in, make sure you're good." Karen saw us talking on the porch. She stared, like she was watching a live betrayal. But she'd miscalculated one big thing. When your housewarming party includes half the local precinct, your reputation's already been vetted. And Karen? She was just getting started digging a hole she couldn't climb out of. By the end of the the HOA had scheduled an urgent compliance review, their version of a slap on the wrist. I was invited to attend, naturally. Or as they put it, strongly encouraged to explain the details of your gathering and future plans to ensure harmony in our community. It was classic HOA speak, polite on the surface but dripping with passive-aggressive judgment. I showed up wearing my department polo, clean-shaven, calm. Karen was already there. She'd brought a thick folder, probably filled with screenshots of my backyard from her ring cam. The room had that stale, fluorescent-lit energy. 3 board members sat behind a long table, sipping from matching mugs like this was a courtroom. Karen got the floor first, and she wasted no time. There were dozens of people, she started, voice tight. I heard loud music, saw open containers, and I didn't recognize most of them. I was worried. I felt unsafe. She glanced at me with the same look someone might give a dog off its leash. I was just doing my civic duty. The chairwoman nodded, turned to me. And your response to these concerns? I didn't bother dragging it out. It was a housewarming. Everyone was invited by me. No ordinances were broken. No noise complaints were filed with the city. And the people she didn't recognize? I paused. They're law enforcement. Friends from work. Off duty. That got some looks. Karen stiffened. Then I dropped the last card. And I've filed a report regarding the misuse of 911 to lodge a non-emergency personal complaint. It's under review with the department. Dead. Silence. Karen's face drained. She opened her mouth, then shut it. She knew she'd crossed a line, and for the first time it looked like she realized it too. What Karen didn't realize was she'd just poked a bear she couldn't unpoke. See, calling 911 wasn't just petty, it was dangerous. And once that call goes through the system, it has to be documented, which meant my department was now involved in an internal review, not of me, but of her. Misuse of emergency services is no joke. False reports tie up actual responders, waste resources, and put people at risk. She had no clue she'd wandered right into that kind of mess. And just like that, the dynamic started to shift. I wasn't just the new guy anymore. Neighbors I hadn't even met started waving when I drove by. A woman from 3 doors down brought over cookies with a handwritten note. "We heard what happened. That was unfair. Hope you're settling." "In okay, Karen?" She was still fuming, but she was quieter now, less bold, until the letter showed up. Certified mail. HOA letterhead. a formal demand that I cease retaliation against a fellow community member and refrain from leveraging personal connections to intimidate residents. That's when I knew Karen was panicking. She'd pushed too far, and now she was trying to flip the script, paint herself as the victim. But I had facts on my side, so I documented everything, every message, every interaction. Every time I caught her loitering near my property line with that phone in her hand, pretending to walk her dog that she never actually had on a leash. I wasn't out to ruin her life. I just wanted her to leave mine alone. But Karen couldn't do that. Because some people, especially the self-appointed rule enforcers, don't know how to back down. They only stop when the rules finally turn against them. So I called in a favor. Nothing underhanded. Just a conversation with internal affairs. Not about Karen specifically, but about the neighborhood. About the 911 call. About what it meant when someone misused that line out of personal spite. The sergeant listening to me didn't say much at first. Just nodded, took notes. Then he asked, "You want us to pursue charges?" I shook my head. "Not yet, but I want a formal record of what happened. In case this escalates, because I knew Karen, she wasn't done. And sure enough, a few days later, a neighbor named Todd, 2 houses down, stopped me while I was mowing the front lawn. "Hey," he said, kind of awkward. "I don't want to get in the middle of anything, but Karen's been going door to door, saying your party was some kind of cover operation, like some sting or bust or something." I blinked. "You're kidding." He held up his hands. I didn't say I believed her, just figured you should know. That's when it clicked. She wasn't just spreading rumors. She was trying to paint me as unstable, dangerous. She thought if she couldn't get me in trouble with the law, she'd make the neighborhood afraid of me instead. So I went to the HOA board directly, scheduled a meeting, brought a copy of the police report, emails, and a few written statements from neighbors willing to go on record about her behavior. I wasn't angry in that room. I was prepared, calm, professional. The board listened, a little too politely, but they couldn't ignore the pile of receipts I laid in front of them. They said they'd take it under advisement. But I could already tell. The tide was turning. By the time the next HOA meeting rolled around, the vibe had completely shifted. Karen still showed up, tight-lipped and twitchy, but she didn't take her usual front-row seat. She sat in the back, alone, watching. And this time, I wasn't the only one with something to say. Mr. Jacobs from the corner house stood up first. I didn't appreciate the police being called on our new neighbor when all I saw was a peaceful gathering. It made the whole block look bad. Then it was Denise, the woman with the cookies. "I think we've let one person's paranoia get a little too loud. If we're going to talk about community standards, maybe we should start with kindness." Each comment chipped away at the wall Karen had been building. The HOA board shifted uncomfortably. Their tone changed. Formal, measured. "We're currently reviewing certain patterns of behavior that may not align with the association's code of conduct," the president said, glancing toward Karen without naming her. Karen looked like she'd swallowed glass, and then the real moment came. One of the officers who'd been at the party, Macaulay, stood up, in uniform this time. "I just want to clarify something for the record," he said. "That gathering was not a sting, not surveillance. It was a private event. If any resident feels threatened by off-duty officers in their own neighborhood, that's a separate issue. But let's not confuse facts with fiction." You could hear a pin drop. Karen didn't speak. Not that night, not after. Something about having her fantasy unraveled in public must have finally landed. But if I'd learned anything, it's that silence from people like her doesn't mean surrender. It just means they're looking for the next move. It came quietly, like most endings do. A week later, I got a knock at the door. Not Karen, someone else. A man in a blue polo with a clipboard and an official HOA badge clipped to his collar. "Mr. Adams?" he asked. "I'm here to conduct a follow-up courtesy check." I raised an eyebrow. "Courtesy for what?" He shifted, a little uncomfortable. "Just verifying some recent claims filed by a resident. We've received reports of safety concerns involving unmarked vehicles and surveillance activity on the property." I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. Unmarked vehicles? You mean my friend's cars? He shrugged. Just following up, but off the record? He leaned in slightly. It's nonsense. You're not the only house she's flagged lately. And there it was. Karen had overplayed her hand. Again. And now she wasn't just losing. Credibility. She was becoming the common thread in every problem on the block. Later that afternoon, I saw her outside, trimming her hedges with the kind of aggressive snipping you reserve for when you're mad at the world. Her lawn looked perfect. Her smile forced. And then something unexpected happened. The HOA sent a letter, not to me, to everyone. An announcement about policy clarification regarding the use of emergency services and a reminder that repeated unfounded reports could result in disciplinary action by the board. They didn't say her name, but they didn't have to. The neighborhood had spoken, the board had spoken, and while she still peered over her fence sometimes like she was waiting to catch me in some imagined crime, she didn't call the cops again. Not once. And me? I finally had what I moved here for in the first place. Peace. Want to hear how it all wraps up in point 10? Spring came early that year, warm breeze, blooming dogwoods, and, for the first time since I moved in, a real sense of calm. No strange letters, no knocks from compliance officers, no sideways glances from neighbors. Karen? She kept her distance, still trimmed her shrubs with military precision, still walked the edge of her lawn like a sentry. But her eyes were different now, less bold, less certain. One Saturday morning, I was out front hosing down the driveway when I noticed a moving truck backing into her driveway. I didn't think much of it until I saw the boxes, then a couch, then a lamp I recognized from the window. She was leaving. I didn't gloat. I didn't wave. I just watched from a quiet corner of my yard, sipping coffee, as two guys loaded her life into the back of that truck. She didn't say goodbye to anyone, not a single neighbor. And when the truck pulled away, she wasn't in the front seat. She'd already gone. A week later, a young couple moved in. Friendly, chill. The guy brought over a six-pack to introduce himself. The woman asked about local takeout spots. Normal. That night we grilled burgers in the backyard. Nothing fancy, just good food, good people. Someone put on music. The same speaker I'd used at that first party. The one that started it all. And this time, no police cruisers. No glares from across the street. Just laughter, smoke rising from the grill. And the kind of easy silence that only comes when people feel safe being themselves. It took a lot to get there. But I stood my ground. Not to win. Not to punish. Just to live in peace. And now, that's exactly what I have. Thanks for watching, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from.